Okay. Let's go ahead and start looking at the different vertebrae and the aspects of them. So, anything that's called a process is, like here, acromoid process. Anything that, it just means it's like a point sticking out. So the spinous process, you know, if you've ever had a physical and they've had you bend over and touch your toes and they run their finger down, they're feeling for those spiny processes on the vertebrae. And that will tell them, okay, that kid does not have scoliosis because it's not deviating either way. It's going straight down. But they're feeling those processes. So they're on the back side. Looking at this vertebrae, what part of it do you think would actually kind of take most of the weight, the brunt of everything? Because what's really big and could handle a lot of weight? Because that's what it's for. It's the body, yeah. So this front part, you can see it really good, how thick. And, you know, starting out up here, it's not real big. Not a whole lot of weight up here for it to handle. But you get way down here in your lumbar, that's where you've got really big, huge bodies of those vertebrae. Because, yeah. Well, think about the weights just stacking on more and more and more. And think about where we do most of our carrying and lifting of things. That takes all that brunt weight bearing. Okay. So you were talking about herniated disc with your mother. This is what they're actually looking at. So an intervertebral disc, which we just call a disc, they're sitting in between the vertebrae, and they're cushions. So we don't have just vertebrae sitting on top of vertebrae, bone sitting on top of bone. So, you know, when you're moving around and jumping and doing things, these discs, these spongy discs, are taking that pressure, all that weight again. So you can have problems with it. So if you end up pinching one, too much weight, and it can cause this nucleus to kind of bust, and it'll start leaking out, and that gets bigger, and it can start putting pressure on nerves. Because, yeah, right here is your spinal cord. So it can put pressure on the nerves going out from the spinal cord, or it can put pressure on the spinal cord itself. Either way, bad news. It's going to cause pain or cause some major dysfunction. Seems like I can usually take these off. I can't take these off, but you do need to come and look at these when you get a chance. I wish I could. Because your axis and your atlas, they fit kind of like a lock and key. So this axis will be kind of inside this atlas. So that you take this atlas and set it on there, and that's what provides you the ability to turn your head. Because those two vertebrae, it's kind of, your axis is sitting up inside it, and it can rotate around it without just kind of rotating around and snapping off. So it kind of gives a little bit of support. So that's what those two vertebrae, and that's the very first vertebrae starting out from the skull. Oh, yeah, I should have went to the next one where they're actually showing you how it works. What is the purpose of the DINS processes? I don't know. Let's look. B. It allows the head to swell. Oh, okay. So they're looking at this one here, the axis itself. Why it's there, it's just allowing you to swivel around that. So we can hold it all together. Okay. So the thoracic cage, we have the thoracic vertebrae behind it, and then we have the thoracic cage. What I really want you to know here is what we consider your true ribs. True ribs are not any more important than some of the other ones, but what makes them true is they're connecting to the sternum directly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 true ribs. And the reason that these three down here, these guys, are not considered true ribs is because they're connecting to cartilage, which then that cartilage is connecting to the true rib cartilage, then the sternum. These 7 are connecting to cartilage, yes, then the sternum. So when we were talking about CPR and we were talking about breaking ribs, you're not actually breaking ribs, you're breaking this cartilage that's here. That's what you're snapping and you hear crackling when you're doing chest compressions on these people. So true, connect to cartilage, then sternum. So we say they connect directly to the sternum. Whereas your false are connecting to cartilage and then to the true rib cartilage, then to the sternum finally. Then you have 2 little floating ribs in the very back, giving a little more protection to those kidneys that are sitting back there. We just call those little floaters, floating ribs. I think that's all I needed on that. You know, you will have to know the different sections of the sternum even. So the manubrium and the body and the xiphoid process. The reason the xiphoid process is important with the CPR issues, remember we want you up here compressing the heart, plus you've got that big bone that can help push and compress on the heart. Whereas this guy down here, we break it off, then we've got that floating in there and it could end up puncturing something and we don't want that to happen. So that's why we want you up in the right spot when doing CPR. I had mentioned the Ackermann process, so just the bony process right here. Again, something really big sticking out means the bigger it is, the bigger the muscles around it. But that's the only thing that is actually attaching this articulate skeleton to the axial skeleton. Is that one area right there, which is crazy. So bone-wise, yes, I have bolts and things back here, but it's not because your scapula is moving back over these ribs back here. So you can kind of wing them out. They'll move. So right here at the Ackermann process is where this arm and this scapula are actually attached to the main skeleton, which is crazy because that's not very much. You want to know on each hand, how many carpals you have. When we're doing labeling and things, I will not have you label the 8 different carpals. You just know that these are carpals. And the picture will look similar. It'll be a whole skeleton, and it'll have that bracket in there. So carpals. There's 8 of them, and then you'll want to know metacarpals and phalanges. But I won't have you tell me how many there are of each one. So 5 of your metacarpals, and then you've got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's your wrist, and your wrist, because they kind of roll. Yeah, that's why it's called carpal tunnel. And what it is when you've done so much, you've created inflammation. It's putting pressure on that nerve. That's why your hands go numb and they hurt. And so that's why they do the braces. The braces will kind of keep you at a better angle than this. That's the problem, is that angle. And you putting pressure on that nerve. So we'll learn these. We'll memorize those. You want to know that, you want to know the differences between male and female pelvises. These in a male are kind of narrow. And so a woman's pelvis, you'll notice, is wider, but it's also shorter. So it's shorter this way, but it's wider too, of course.
So they can get burned?
Yes, definitely. Really, I don't think there's anything else. I think the rest of this is just a bunch of bones that you're going to have to learn. Again, we'll do a couple activities, but if I was you, I would go ahead and start looking at your skeleton and trying to memorize those bones.
Just the limbs and all of the other stuff that you said.
I'm going to give you the pages, but I mean, it's a lot. Thankfully, you know, the right side looks just like the left side. So that will help out. But you're just going to have to memorize all of the bones.